The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your hosts, Dr. Dean Bertram and Jenn Durrell.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Talking Weird on the Untold Radio Network. I'm delighted that you can all join us tonight, or where maybe you're listening or watching us post-show and one of the archive versions, either on the many podcast channels that we're on, or on YouTube, or on Facebook. But greetings. I'm also delighted to be able to start the show by saying, hey, baby.
Hey, baby.
Jenn Durrell returns for the second time in the last month. It's good to have you back here.
Yeah, it's good to be back. My schedule's kind of changed a little bit, so
it makes me happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any paranormal stories for us since we last talked to you? That's how we always used to start the show.
Oh, that's true. Nothing too paranormal-ish. Not right now. Hopefully, I'll have some more stories later. How about
your whole life's just one paranormal adventure, really?
I guess so.
You'll be like, nothing happened, except the apparition the other day, and except there was a dark figure leaning over my bed, and my daughter saw a ghost at the front door, and things were flying off the walls, but nothing usual. Nothing unusual.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're back from Midwest Weird Fest, where we were last week. For those of you who watched last week, of course, it was a pre-record with Norio Hayakawa from The Conspiratologist, which is a wonderful short documentary we played at the festival, but it's great to be live. And the gentleman who's joining us today, I actually first met at Midwest Weird Fest. He comes quite regularly, and I've got to know him over the years. And what will probably be most interesting to all of you is he grew up in the Bray Road area. In fact, he was a teenager during the major flap that Linda Godfrey popularized in her local articles for the paper there, and then went on to popularize more in various interviews on shows like Monster Quest, which was, of course, produced by Doug Hychek, who is the brains behind the Untold Radio Network, and in many books, including her I guess, seminal book, The Beast of Bray Road, which is such a fantastic book. He also has had many paranormal experiences of his own and lives in a house that may very well be haunted, from what I can tell. So anyway, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome to the show Dustin Skilling.
Good evening, guys.
Hi, Dustin.
How are you guys?
Good. It's so good to have you here. As I was saying just before we started, it's like Midwest Weird Fest never ended. I have two people from the festival with me.
Yeah, that's great.
Did you enjoy the fest this year?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I know for my wife and I, we instantly fell in love with the movie Break.
Oh, yeah.
It was so well done. Yeah.
John Fallon directed revenge thriller with the wonderful Kevin Interdonato, who co-wrote it with John and is the star who was at the festival. And it was so great to have him there.
Yeah, Kevin was amazing in that movie.
Just terrifying.
Yeah, it was great.
I first saw him outside the Micon cinema in person just before the show, and he was talking to Mark Polish, and I was careful with how I approached him because I didn't want him to beat me within an inch of my life. But in the reality, he's very friendly. I guess that's the strength of being an actor. You can put on these faces which don't resemble your true personality at all. So.
Yeah. I thought his character was so intense. It really it kept your eyes to the screen, So
magnetizing, really.
Yep.
Anything else popped out at you at the festival this year you enjoyed?
Thought Murmur was good. It was very unique. We liked that one. I love all the shorts. The one short that was titled Ghosted. That one tugged on the heartstrings a little bit. And then Welcome to Kitty Town.
It's just fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, there's, there wasn't one we thought was, subpar at all. That's for sure.
Well,
far from it.
That's excellent. Ghosted is, I don't know if I told you at the festival, Ghosted is kind of the writer, who I believe is also the lead in that, it's kind of the way of him dealing with his own young wife's passing, because it's
Sure,
about, of course, a
sure.
wife who kind of comes back to the husband in maybe another form, or maybe it's just her return. But I think that's why it's so emotionally effective, because one can only imagine the energy that went into that from a husband who was still grieving his young, beautiful wife.
Right, right.
But anyway, let's get into talking about Bray Road. I guess can you fill us in a little bit about when you remember the sightings first hitting, and
Yeah.
just your memories and of the whole event would be fascinating to hear.
Yeah, I do remember. It would have been my sophomore year. It would have been before I had my license, but a bunch of my friends did. But I remember a news report from, I believe it was one of the stations out of Milwaukee that may have, I believe, covered Doris's, um, um, her seeing it. Um, and I remember seeing that, and then shortly after, people were just talking and talking and talking about it all the time. And there was, I know, a handful of us, and there may have been a beer or two involved, but we would drive late at night up and down Bray Road, just looking, just always looking, hoping to find something. You know.
Was it, I guess, as teenagers, I remember even when I was a kid, I loved to try to find anything that was scary or out there. But was it something which was scary at the time? Like when you were there, were you conscious maybe there is some
I don't.
wolf-like creature prowling this road?
I think it was more of, hey, let's go have some fun and see if we can see it. But man, I would kind of hope we don't see it, type deal. You know. So.
Can you remember what the spirit of the town was like at the time? Was there
Um,
genuine fear, or?
I don't think there was a fear. I think there was in general somewhat of disbelief. And I remember there being rumors or stories about wildlife that had been killed and left in fields up and down that road and in that area. And I don't know if that was actually true or not, but I remember stories, being passed around the school. I don't remember if there was like a huge like town fear. I think it was more of a curiosity for most people.
I know you said one of your friends, one or more, actually saw the beast. Can you remember their story?
Yeah, well, it was Doris, that short video I sent you. I wasn't necessarily friends with her. I did talk to her on occasion, but she was just a classmate. I believe she was a grade ahead of me. But I remember her telling people in classes and in the hallways and stuff like that. But as teenagers, I think it was kind of a different feel. I don't know how the adults in the town were reacting or feeling about like an uptick in sightings. From what I've read, like there's been sightings around that area since the 80s. Um, but I had never heard of this until it happened, like, and we had somebody from school that actually was a witness to it.
Do you think it was the popularization of the sightings by Linda Godfrey in the local paper that triggered more, or had more people come forward, or?
I would imagine, yeah. I mean, it's a small town. Like I don't know how well somebody just out of the blue kind of saying, "Hey, I saw a wolf man down this back road." Like, you know what I mean? It's not something that's necessarily believable when it's just one person. But yeah, maybe, a couple reports in a news article, maybe obviously more people were comfortable.
And your uncle was in one of those news reports as well. I believe he was in the sheriff's or police department or something. Is that
Yeah,
right?
correct. It's my it's my uncle Bill. He was a detective in Walworth County, and I don't know how much he had to do with it. I'm sure to an extent. I believe he was in the higher ranks in the detectives, so I'm sure there were some sort of investigations or something that they had to go through. And I think his comment on it back then in 93 was that, oh, maybe they just saw a large wolf or a coyote. Well, people from Wisconsin know how big coyotes are, and they're not the same size. So
Yeah, that's a point that Linda Godfrey made.
nothing, Uncle Bill, if you're watching, I love you. Like, yeah.
That's a point Linda Godfrey made in that old news report you sent through too. And my goodness, was it wonderful seeing her at that stage in her life. I knew Linda a little bit. She came to Midwest Weed Fest one year. Maybe you saw her the year she came.
Okay.
And she was always such a lovely lady. But a point she makes in that video, and I think it's so true, is people in Wisconsin are used to seeing deer and bear and all these things which people
Yeah.
like to coyote, dismiss what the sightings are. But I think it's pretty hard for somebody who's a native to this state to
Yeah.
see one of those standard creatures and go, "Oh, I saw a Dogman," or
Right.
the Beast
Right.
of Bray Road.
Yeah. Yeah. We know what wildlife we have here. And, up here in Eau Claire, well, obviously you've been here. It's, much more wooded and, not a lot of city here around. So we know what our animals look like in the area. And same in southern Wisconsin. For one, they really don't have wolves that much in that area. I mean, I'm sure there are some, and then there's coyotes, but they're small.
Yeah, it's hard to
And even if they were up on hind legs, a coyote or a wolf isn't going to, really be as large as it's been described, at least.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was just about to say. So do you get back down to Elkhorn, or do you still have family, friends in the area?
Oh yeah, I got a ton of family down there. My kids they live down in the area. Yeah, everybody's down there. So
do they is there still talk of the beast there locally today, or?
Not that I know of. I think once in a while, some talk will flare up now and again. I know a while back a movie came on, I believe it was the Sci-Fi Channel, and I don't remember what it's exactly called. It may have just been the Beast of Bray Road, and it was, it was based on that. It felt a little loosely based on it, but of course I watched it, and I think when that came, there was some more chatter about it because there was some media out about it again, but.
Yeah, all of these things get difficult, I think, once there's media excitement to determine how much is. And again, I'm very suspicious of saying, well, somebody just mistook a coyote or something. But
Right.
throughout history, I think when there's an increased interest in a phenomenon, more people seem to see it. And whether that is something manifesting, or whether that is mistaken identity, or whether that's people paying more attention, or whether it's people who are more comfortable to come forward because so many other people have come forward, it's difficult to tell. But certainly when the fires are stoked, all of a sudden there seems to be, tenfold as many reports.
Yeah.
I know some people still go and do investigations down there. I remember we had Eric Mintel on the show, I don't know, a number of months ago now, and he'd only just come back from doing an investigation in the area. So the paranormal and cryptid community still seem to think there's something there.
And I think I was doing some reading earlier today, and there's basically reportings and sightings of the same humanoid figure in other parts of Wisconsin, even the UP, and like same, descriptions at least. And I'm across everywhere there's descriptions of wolfmen and figures like that.
Yeah, it is. It does seem to be something that has grown more nationally. Certainly back when you were there and the beast sightings were first erupting on national news, it seemed to be like maybe Wisconsin and maybe Michigan, like you were saying. This seemed to be the area where these things were. But again, when things get popular, they seem to spread beyond their usual geographic boundaries, whatever that means.
Yeah. Yep.
I should let Jen ask you some questions about the paranormal
Oh,
things in
sure.
your life, because I know that's her field.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious, since it's been many years since the Beast of Bray Road was spotted. Is there anything else that's been mentioned lately in that area? That's
Not that I know of. I know there's always been talk of a few haunted places in that town.
yeah.
If I remember right, maybe there was a Chinese restaurant on the one corner. I had heard rumblings of stuff going on there, and maybe a couple other buildings. I mean, I know personally, me living in that town, I had some experiences in a house that I lived in just outside of Elkhorn, in the country, in a rural part. But yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
there's a few old buildings and stories tied to
Yeah.
Elkhorn, that's for sure.
Do you want to share some
Yeah,
of
I
those
mean,
experiences?
sure. So when I was in early teens, sixth, seventh grade, we lived in this house, and it was in a neighborhood outside of the main part of Elkhorn. We still went to the same school system. We were just considered in the country. And we moved into the house, and things would happen, and I wouldn't really pay attention to them. I was young, and it was an older house. There's a lot of what I call house noises,
Hmm.
which I think sometimes people pass off as house noises, and they're not house
Yeah.
noises. So I never really thought about it too much. But there was one day, my mom used to crochet quite a bit, and this is very vivid for me. And she was crocheting a blanket until actually, to this day, I call that blanket the ghost blanket,
Hmm.
because she was working on it when I saw the ghost.
Hmm.
So we're sitting on the couch together. She's to my left, I remember, and she's working on it. And our couch sat in line with the hallway that ran down to the 3 bedrooms and bathroom in the restroom in our house. So something compelled me to look down the hallway, and my parents' bedroom was directly at the end of the hallway. And that bedroom always made me nervous.
Yeah.
I don't know, just a weird feeling, and I never really went in there that much. So I look down the hallway, and I think I'm about 13, and I see basically what looks like, from the chest up, a figure peeking around the door jamb, looking back down the hall at me.
Hmm.
And I look away instantly. I'm 13, and I
Yeah.
don't have the courage to look
Mhm.
again. And I don't know why, but I don't say anything to my mom. And I don't know how long I sat there. I finally muster up enough courage to look back down. I look back down, nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, what did I just see? What is my 13-year-old brain comprehending right now, right?
Yeah.
So I passed it off as imagination.
Yeah.
For years. And there were some other odd things that happened in that house, which I can get to kind of after the fact. So we'll fast forward. I was 12, 13, maybe 14 at the oldest at the time. And fast forward, I believe I'm 25, 26. And I am sitting at my dad's. I think we're cooking out, having, just hanging out in the yard. It was summer. And we're talking about memories of old places we lived and stuff. And my dad, we were talking about that house. And I told him, I'm like, it was kind of creepy at that house. And he goes, the people who lived there before us first of all, they happen to be family friends.
Mhm.
Of us. we rented the house after they did. So me and my dad are talking 12 years later, roughly. And I was like, Dad, that house always gave me the creeps. He's like, well, the couple who rented it before us used to say they saw a guy peeking around the door jamb down the hallway.
Get out.
From our bedroom. Almost, fell out of my chair. I know what I said to my dad. I called him a name. And I was like, Dad, you moved us into a haunted house. I saw that.
Yeah.
And there were times, 1 or 2 times after that I saw that image, but not at that house. And I don't know if I saw it or it was subconscious and I was fearing it.
Yeah.
But there was 2 other times. Yeah.
What did it look
weird.
like, the figure?
Okay, there wasn't super detailed facial figures. There are facial features.
Yeah.
But I don't also want to say it was just a white face. It was just kind of, you could tell, you had the sense it was a face, but you couldn't see the face, if that makes any sense at all.
So it was light colored? It wasn't dark? Huh.
Mm-mm. Excuse me. It was light colored. Like it almost looked like a white shadow of a face. And then it looked like it had almost a hood on, draped over. And I could only see it, from about the chest up. And it was like looking around the door.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And then I did for over a decade in my mind, even as a young adult, before I had that talk with my dad, went back and forth. Did I see that? Didn't I see that? I was 13. Oh, it was my imagination. And so my dad and I got to talking about different things that like looking back now, or, thinking back, it's like, oh man, like, wow. There was one time I had to go to, it was bedtime, had to go to bed, and I heard this groaning, like in my room, like groaning or like a creaking. I don't know, it was deep. And it really scared me. And I remember screaming at the top of my lungs for my parents, and nobody came. But they were just down the hall in the living room.
Jeez.
And then all of a sudden, light came in the room from under my door. And then I screamed, and then my dad was there.
Yeah.
It was like something was not letting the sound. I could hear me yelling for my parents, but nobody else did.
So have you figured out, like, history-wise, like if someone passed there, or since the fact that you saw lights, it makes me kind of wonder if it wasn't some type of supernatural being.
Yeah. So it's a small town, and the people I know that my parents rented from, I went to school with some of, like, I think the granddaughter of the person who we rented from. And I still, up until not too long ago, was friends with them on Facebook. And I sent her a message, and because I had always heard that there was a suicide in that house at one point. Okay. But I also know that it was this girl who lived in our neighborhood. Her dad built it, or her grandpa built it maybe, and rented it out, and that's how we got it. And I had always thought it was a family member of hers that maybe had taken their life in the house.
Yeah.
Because that family lived there first, and then, down the line rented it. But I reached out to her a couple of years ago, and it's a touchy subject because I didn't know what happened. And she said she wasn't aware of any suicide in that house before we moved in there.
Yeah.
But I want to, and I hope I'm not going to offend anybody, because there are probably a few old schoolmates listening, and there was a really strange room in that basement, really strange room, and it scared the daylights out of me.
Yeah.
It was in the corner of the basement. It was an unfinished basement. Other than the corner, it was just put up with like some like DIY 2x4s and paneling. And then there was like a workbench. And then the strangest official documents plastered all over the walls. Just sporadically all over. Like official and glued, like glued perfect onto the walls. I don't even know. It was just terrifying to me as, you know, a 12, 13-year-old kid. It was just
weird.
It was just weird. It was the weirdest thing. Yeah. But other stuff that used to happen in my brother's room right next to me, he had this little like little, you know, like little kids learning toy. It looked like a robot. Well, his door never stayed open, his bedroom door. So we would use this as a door weight, you know, and it was heavy, 5 pounds, maybe 7 pounds. And it stayed there all the time, unless it was bedtime, then we would shut, you know, the doors were shut or whatever. My brother and I were in the living room playing one time, and his bedroom door just slammed. Bam! We're like, what? And we run down there, and that toy is on the other side of the room. And we didn't know what. We didn't know. We just didn't know. We're like, looked at each other and just put it back. You know, he's 5 years younger than me. Like, if I don't understand at 13, he's not going to.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it was stuff like that in that house that would happen. I remember my dad telling me one night, I think me and my brother were in bed, and he was up, and I don't know if mom was working or whatever, but he heard like he told me he heard like a huge crash of glass in the basement. Well, we didn't have any windows in the basement. And there was no like spare windows in the basement or, you know, storm windows. But he said he ran down there, and he's like, yeah, I didn't find anything. But he was dead sure he heard like what sounded like a window fall down and, you know, or, you know, glass break down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel just uneasy in the house generally?
All the time. Yeah. The basement terrified me. In my parents' room, the basement, and yeah. And I do remember my brother, my grandpa had passed away somewhat recently. And I think he woke up in the middle of the night or woke up in the morning and said he saw grandpa. But in his closet, but grandpa, I believe he said, was still in the casket. But my brother would have been pretty young, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that time.
Yeah. That could be just his subconscious or something.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I do believe my dad said most nights at the same time, it sounded like the front door opened, like it would creak open and close, like at the same time every night.
Yeah. So kind of like, I was wondering if there was some type of residual energy, since there was glass shattering and there's no glass in the basement. So.
Right. And then I had heard too, after we had moved out of there, and I don't know how long after the fact, that there potentially was another suicide on that property, but outside in a tree.
Jeez.
Maybe. I can't confirm, you know, but there's a lot of weird in that house, nonetheless, I suppose.
Do you think the whole area is weirder down there? I mean, we were obviously talking about the Beast of Bray Road before. And I know there were rumors circulating around that of, you know, satanic rituals or occult activity that might have brought that thing into existence. But just generally in the area, did you hear lots of stories about weirdness? Or
trying to think, like, you know, I moved from there when I was, I think, 19. So it was pretty short after high school. And, you know, I didn't necessarily keep in touch with a lot of people who lived right in the area, but it does seem like now that I like look back, like, yeah, kind of there's something in the area, you know? Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
there
I
seem
guess,
to-
you know, every town has like their old buildings and you know, like, oh,
Yeah.
that place is haunted and the stories about it, but yeah,
Have there been any tragedies, like historically?
like historically in Elkhorn. I don't remember like anything major. I mean, let's face it, that there's murders everywhere. There's been
Mhm.
murders. There are not many that I can remember. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a handful, but you know, I don't remember like something, you know, that would affect the town as a whole, you know, at least yeah, I don't think so at least. But
Mm.
David, who's a regular viewer of the show, asks, has there been any other creatures encountered at any time beside the beast? Do you know of any other like cryptid or anything down there?
I haven't heard or read anything from that area about some other type of creatures, but you know, who's to say there isn't? And you know,
Mhm.
people haven't said anything yet. Or
And here's a
but
follow-up question from Nancy, another regular listener and viewer. Any lights in the woods, like a portal opening? Have you heard of anything like that?
I haven't heard of anything like that. But you know, parts of Elkhorn are very rural, and there's a you know, it's a farming community. You know, it's grown quite a bit since I've been there, but you know, in all essence, it's a farming community, and so I mean, yeah, I mean,
I
I was just
remember.
reading a comment, yeah,
Yeah, so
um,
somebody said there was Lazarus
circle,
says there were stone circles in both locations I mentioned. Oh, this was other Dogman
circle,
locations, I think. I
yeah,
know
yeah,
that when Eric Mintel investigated down there, who again we had on the show, I think on his show he said there was a weird light or a portal thing, didn't he, Jen? If I remember, when they were out on the farm where the Beast of Bray Road's always seen.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think so. I think that's what he said. Yeah.
really, hmm. I might have
So
to take a visit now.
Yeah.
just be careful.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
So
isn't that what they talk about though? Like with Bigfoot and all cryptids, there's always some type of light that's around, and they always think it's a portal
sure,
that they're kind of moving in and out of. So,
I think a
yeah,
lot of these things are related. I mean, people who listen to the
mhm.
show regularly know my opinion on
Yeah.
there's some kind of grand field, unity type theory of all of this stuff, perhaps having something to do with each other. But what's your take on do you have a broader paranormal philosophy, Dustin?
philosophy
Or
for me. Oh,
yeah,
um, I really have started coming to this kind of theory over the last maybe like 5, 6 years that it might not be in our lifetime. I don't know how long it'll be, but science will catch up to paranormal activity. I think I think that science is close to proving different dimensions and being able to analyze different things that we can't see with our own eyes or hear with our ears. I think science is somewhat close to, yeah, like finding a path to the afterlife and seeing it from here.
fascinating. Yeah, it's so hard to, at least for me, to get a handle on an expectation that we'll ever work this out. But you're right, there do seem to be some movements in some of the more advanced physics fields, for example, like
Yeah,
quantum physics, which seems to suggest that things are more complicated. And by the way, that stuff's way too complicated and above my pay grade to actually understand. I can kind of read the cribbed version and pretend
yeah,
I understand it, but who knows? No, it's certainly a weird world. And now I know you've moved, obviously,
yeah,
probably a number of times, but I think even your latest location is somewhere where you encounter
yeah,
things, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm in Eau Claire. I'm honestly less than 5 minutes from the Micon Theater where the film fest is. But yeah, we bought this house um, actually 11 years ago, just this month. And initially nothing. With this house is awesome. We actually somewhat love that we encounter activity once in a while.
Huh.
We don't feel threatened. We don't feel afraid or scared of anything. I feel it's just more whatever is here, energy or whatever it is just saying kind of like, hey, I'm here too, type deal. But yeah, we've had some strange things happen, and you know, when things happen, you always try and justify it or find a reasoning for it when it happens. But like I think this is one of the first things we had happen here is we were upstairs. We were already settled into the house, and my wife has like boxes with craft supplies in it, I believe, and it was up on a shelf in the basement. And all of a sudden, we hear like a kind of a crash, and we're like, "Oh, what happened?" We go downstairs, and those boxes were, I think, like 5-6 feet away from the shelf, and just like spilled all over, like something like tossed it off the shelf, and just went, and we're like, "Oh, that's weird, right?"
Your
And we're
family
like,
have a thing with basement hauntings, man.
"Yeah, yeah, yeah." And so we didn't like, we were like, "Oh, ghost," you know. And then it wasn't too much after that. Kim and I golf once in a while, and we both have a set of clubs that were in the basement. And it's hard to describe without showing, but the two sets of clubs were like this, leaned on a table. Hers was here, and mine was here. we heard a set fall, and it wasn't a set that went this way and fell straight to the side, or this one straight to the side, or either went back straight off the table. Hers was on the left other side of mine on the floor. It would have had to have been moved to get there, but it looked like it was just like kind of picked up and then thrown down, like away from its original spot.
Have you ever made an attempt at any type of communication with whatever might be there?
Well, here's the thing. My wife's on watching, and she doesn't want me to do it because she's afraid I'll open something up.
She might be right.
My daughter, Izzy, who is like this little amateur ghost sleuth, and she's really into this stuff too. Yeah, like we wanted to get like a spirit box app for our phone and try and do stuff. But we didn't out of respect for my wife, you know, but I mean, I would love to.
I can see Jen just there, so going, I'd like to come and see.
Yeah, no, I know, 100%. Yeah, and here's the other thing that's kind of strange about this. The people who built this house have passed away a while ago, and the lady who lived here, her name was Elaine, and that's kind of what we've called our ghost. We kind of feel it's her, although we do feel other people have come in that we know too at certain times and have done things. But we get mail for Elaine still from people who think enough of her to send her a Christmas card, but don't know she's gone.
Oh, jeez.
And we got one this last year, and it seems like a lot of the activity here is centered around the basement. So I just took that Christmas card, and it's just at the top of the stairs going to the basement. I just kind of leave it there for her.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
And yeah, and kind of since then, there hasn't been a ton of activity, but yeah, I just left it on there. Like it's been there for months now. But we've had lights go on and off here. There was one time my wife was working at the kitchen table. Her uncle had just passed, and he was a musician, and she was working on some CDs of his music to give to family. And we had above our dining room table just one of those like dome lights that, you know, they're fairly inexpensive, and you put them up and you screw that thing on and it holds it up. That whole thing came down next to her computer.
Jeez.
But the only way that can happen is if it's unscrewed. and I put it on, and I know how tight I screwed it, but it came out and it slammed. It was a glass. It was actual glass. Slammed right next to her computer.
Gosh.
Yeah. And
It
then
seems almost malicious stuff like that.
that one seemed a little different. Yeah. The other ones just seemed like, hey, I'm here type deal. But that was the one that was kind of different from the others. TV, there was a little bit for a while when before my wife and I got married, just 5 years ago, we would talk about the wedding and things would happen. We're talking about the wedding one time and our dining room light just turned on.
Huh.
Yeah, it just like turned on. In fact, I think Kim's mom was here and she even looked at me. She's like, "Did you see that?" I said, "Yeah." And then we were talking about our upcoming wedding and like the TV turned off, just turned off. Everything else stayed on, just TV turned off. So, it's like kind of small stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like maybe she's might be wanting to get your attention.
Right. There was one other time, and this one was kind of weird. I was sitting on my side steps here. Maybe it was like 2 summers ago. And it was like just like dusk. It was just starting to get dark a little bit. And it felt like I felt somebody behind me, and I just hear, "Who is he?"
Mm-hmm.
And I look around, and there's nobody.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the entire situation. I just hear, it felt like somebody's behind me, and I hear, "Who is he?"
Yeah.
And then there was nothing.
Yeah. So you tapped into your clairaudient. That's what you
What's
did.
that?
You tapped into your clairaudient.
Yeah, it was weird. I looked around. Yeah. I walked around the yard. I walked in behind the garage to see if people were in their backyards, but it wasn't like a loud voice. It was like just conversational voice, like, "Who is he?" But
Grasshopper ETAI wanted to ask, or wanted me to point out to you that he suggested houses are a reflection of your inner self. Every item, where it's placed, first floor, top floor, basement, it's all part of your experience that you can interpret. Certainly, I think sometimes our personal psychology or our internal psyche is connected to an external, I don't know, like perhaps like Jung's collective unconscious. Somehow our personal reality is plugged into a broader reality. I do think there is something to that.
Yeah.
And actually, Lazarus Corbeau said something similar. He said, "Basement equals the underworld, literally and metaphorically."
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah,
that's very true. Huh.
Yeah.
Huh. So, Jen, do you have any advice at all for Dustin regarding what he should or shouldn't do with these things in his house?
I want somebody like you to come back to that old house I lived in.
Yeah,
I'm sure she would.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if your wife's concerned about using apps or anything like that, there's other ways you can communicate where you're not, necessarily using an app. You can have them use Knox or whatever, figure out a way.
Yeah.
But
there was a time we were having this like weird thing with this light down in the basement just going on and off. Like, and well, I'm from Wisconsin. I'm a Packer fan. So like this little neon like Packer helmet, like I would turn it off, right? It was off, go down the load, turn it off, in like 2 minutes, it would just go back on. So I even took the batteries out of the remote, thinking maybe the remote's malfunctioning, and it would just do it. It was just the weirdest thing. Yeah. I also I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go, please, Dustin. I know you were still talking. I'm sorry.
We have like a speaker bar for our TV downstairs, and we turn it off all the time. And I'll go down there just random, in the basement, and that speaker bar will be on, and I'll turn it off. I'll go back down a few days later. It's on again. Turn it off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it comes in waves too. You know, it's
Mhm.
not always consistent. It'll be like, oh, a few things will happen and then nothing for a while.
Yeah. You
But
should probably start having your own like little journal. Every
yeah,
time something happens, write it down.
sure,
Like
sure.
the time of day, everything like that.
Yeah,
And kind of keep track of it. And then eventually, you'll probably start seeing, other things,
sure,
meshing
sure.
together. And then like, oh, wait a minute,
Yeah, yeah,
it could be residual or it's just somebody trying to get your attention.
yeah,
But there's a lot of things that you can do though. But of course,
yeah.
I probably should make sure your wife's okay with it though.
And we have this weird wall in our basement where we keep a lot of photos, like this collage wall of photos. We go to a lot of like concerts and stuff, and we have all these pictures from them, and like different bands we've seen. My son's in a band. He's got a bunch of stuff up there, and we can't keep pictures on the wall. Like we can't, but just in the middle of the night, bam, crash, like glass breaks.
Somebody really wants your attention then. If that's
Like,
if it's happening a lot.
Yeah, like I could take a picture of that collage wall now, and there's just a bunch of missing spaces and broken frames underneath it.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it happens a lot, you're going to have to get to the point where you're going to need to communicate and figure out what the heck's going on.
Right.
I mean, if it's just every once in a while, then I would ignore it. But if it's that much, I would try and figure out what it needs.
Yeah, I think we've like pictures have fallen but not broken, but there's like 3 or 4 that actually the glass broke out of them. Yeah. It has a carpeted floor too. I don't know. Yeah, no, I don't know.
It's interesting that you were in a house which seems to have had a lot of activity when you were younger, and one now which also seems to have a lot of activity. I'm not sure if between those houses, if you encountered things as well. I'm just wondering out loud if maybe you're haunted. Sometimes they say people are haunted as much as a location is.
Yeah. I don't remember. Nothing sticks out between the 2 houses that has ever happened, or that I've witnessed, or, but I do get, I guess I'll call them creepy feelings in houses or buildings or even stores. That's for sure. Like I can feel certain things, like, oh, like I shouldn't probably be in this area of this house right now.
Yeah.
Type deal.
So when you had that voice in your head, was that the first time you've ever had anything like that?
That's the only time ever.
Have you ever walked in a room and just smelt something or gotten sick for no reason?
We have had, both my wife and I here, just random smells come to us.
Yeah.
I believe my wife has smelled cigarette smoke at times, and to be fair, so has her mom.
Okay.
And they both claim it. They may think it's like my wife's Uncle Bob, potentially, which is obviously your mom's brother.
Yeah. Does it happen when the mom's only around?
No.
Okay.
No. But they've both mentioned it at separate occasions, and I believe my wife has smelled like her grandma's chicken noodle soup at times, just randomly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've smelled that too, like a couple of like what would be like nostalgic stuff, from when you were younger. But yeah.
Yeah.
Dustin Skilling, who I'm assuming is a relative of yours, said, "Remember the figure was seen in my closet by you."
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of the times that I had seen that figure from the other house that peeked around the corner. I was there and saw it there, or thought I did. I don't know. It terrified me either way.
And what house? The old house or the new house?
It was actually just that was actually my ex-wife that commented.
Oh, okay.
It was her parents' house. It was her parents' house. Yeah.
So it's following you.
I mean, potentially. Yeah. but I haven't.
It happens.
Yeah, like I can see the image vividly in my head, but I haven't necessarily like seen it.
Yeah.
Since those couple of times.
Mm-hmm. You might actually be a sensitive, and I think that, I don't know for sure, just my own little theory and speculation from my own experiences that, something just might be attracted to you because they think that you can communicate with it.
Sure.
So they'll follow.
Yeah, and Kim and I have a good friend who's a clairvoyant, and we've spoken to her quite a few times, and she's given suggestions on how to do certain things and try and do things, but I don't know. It like I get a little nervous, like I want to, but then I don't want to. Like,
yeah, no,
you know
I
what
completely understand. Yeah.
Would it bother you if you knew more or you had more contact?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That I don't know if it would bother me to know more, or if it would be great to have certain knowledge. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to know without knowing, I guess.
It is scary though. It's a big step to want to kind of open yourself up to that.
Yeah.
And then what do you do when you got that information, because then you got to learn how to protect yourself.
Right.
Because I think once you do open yourself up, then other things show up too.
Sure.
Because I've had that problem. So
yeah.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ken Rock made the point earlier as well of the dangers of investigating your own house, and I'd be concerned about doing that as well, to be honest. But I'm a scaredy cat when it comes to this stuff. Jen has no fear of the paranormal. I'm like,
right.
I'm like, I don't want to. I'm a bit like your wife as well. I don't want to open any doors.
Yeah.
I'm fearful of what'll come through when you do it.
Yeah.
What about other things? Have you ever seen anything which you would consider UFO related, like strange lights in the sky? Or...
I haven't. That's one thing like I'm all for, like, I want to see something, but I haven't had the privilege of seeing anything like a UFO or anything like that.
I just ask her, sometimes people will have a lot of experiences in one area and nobody will ask them, but they're actually have had these experiences outside the kind of parameter of the phenomenon that people are talking about. I would have loved that if you'd seen the Beast of Bray Road as well. Yeah, I saw the Beast of Bray Road and I've been haunted my whole life. There's a pattern there. They're the kind of patterns I always hope for. That's me just wanting something to confirm my biases, though. I suppose.
Have you ever dealt with any sleep paralysis or anything like that?
Once.
Just once? Yeah.
Like, that's weird that you asked that. I was thinking about that today coming on here. I don't remember when it was, but I remember being startled out of a dream one time, and I'm trying to remember. There was something about an airplane in my dream, and I woke up and I could not legitimately move my legs for a bit. Like, it was terrifying. So I don't know if that's kind of the same thing, but that's the only kind of thing. Oh man. All right, I'll hurry. So there has been twice here in this house and once outside this house.
Yeah.
Where I have been laying in bed in basically asleep and kind of start waking up for some reason, and then like a dump truck hits me with, like, I can feel almost a force just like kind of like into my body, and I get violently shaking with the chills.
Jeez.
Do you know what that is?
No, I have no idea, but it happened twice here.
Okay. Well, if nothing else weird happened with it, I have my own theory with that. Because a lot of people, when they get a vibration feeling or anything where you feel like you're just hitting yourself right into your body or something, that, to me, that is your astral body jumping back into your body once you have left and gone into the dream state. So I felt that myself before. And sometimes that is also a theory with sleep paralysis. So
Sure.
people always feel like they're fighting that demon,
Yeah.
and it's actually your astral body just popping right back into your body.
Yeah.
So it can feel like you're fighting something. And
Yeah.
it's,
And it's like I just shake and I'm
there's always a
freezing
vibration
cold.
and
Like just like and like I can't. It's hard to get under control. There's been times where Kim has like put a blanket on me and laid on top of me to try and get me to that's happened twice here in bed. Yeah.
So have you ever like literally just laid back into the bed, like your body falls into the bed and that shakes, or is it just different?
No, it's like I'm just a little bit groggy waking up, like if you gotta like roll over and switch positions, and then just all of a sudden like an impact, I'm go from 98.6 degrees to 20 degrees and just shaking.
Yeah.
Like kind of violently. Yeah.
Yeah. That could be a dream state thing, or of course there's other theories too. So
yeah.
But you mentioned lights, so that's why I was kind of curious, because
Sure.
when you're younger, you said you saw lights go underneath the.
Yeah, it was strange. Yeah.
Nancy wanted to know quickly, did you ever talk to that figure you've seen peeking out? Like, have you ever said anything to I don't blame you.
No. Yeah, and there was no, like I said, there's no distinct facial features. You could just, it was a face, like, and it just had the thing. And and Nancy, at the time I was like 13, it scared the you-know-what out of me. And so no.
Yeah, it's interesting that it was a light, because usually if it's got that glow to it, it's more of an apparition.
Sure.
Not too many people get to see apparitions. So that was probably more of an apparition than like a shadow person that a lot of people see. So that's pretty cool that you got to experience that.
Yeah.
No. And David wanted to know if he carried anything from the original house. If you carried
from that house.
Dustin. Yeah.
Potentially, I may have some old sports memorabilia I had as a teenager that I could have had. I don't have I don't think I have like old toys or anything that I brought with. Yeah, I don't think so. Although my mom recently did give me my brother's old Teddy Ruxpin toy from the 80s, and that's sitting in my basement.
If that thing starts talking, you'll have to be worried.
I'm going to need your address. I'm sending it to you.
Oh my goodness. Well, geez, what fun talking to you, Dustin. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we sign off? We're almost at the hour, so.
I will let you know, Dean, being from Australia, I have had Vegemite.
Hey!
What did you think?
Terrible.
Oh, gosh.
But, oddly enough, I tasted it. I had an old band teacher in junior high, around the age when I lived in that house, who, I don't know if he was Australian, I don't remember, but he had an infatuation with Australia. He brought some one day. Huh.
It's an acquired taste. I mean, I wish I had it here all the time. You probably buy it on Amazon or something, but I did grow up on it. I think the majority of my breakfasts, I had that on toast.
Sure. Yeah.
But whenever I've given it to anybody here, I have a friend who's actually a very talented chef here. He visited once, and I had a little tiny little jar my parents had bought from Australia when they were visiting, who were probably watching Hi Mum and Alan. You tend to watch the show. Thank you. And I let him have like a little, he couldn't stand it. Yeah. I think the saltiness and the weirdness is kind of overpowering to people who aren't used to that yeasty, salty thing. But anyway. That's another weird thing for people. I don't know. Is Dustin frozen?
Yeah.
Oh no, I thought we lost you for a moment, Dustin.
No, I'm back.
Just as I was ranting about Vegemite. Well, it was so much fun having you on the show. How great!
Yeah, I had
a
great
love
time.
chatting to you. We'll have to have you back one day and chat about something else weird.
Anytime.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Dustin, for joining us. Thank you, Jenn, for co-hosting with me. It's always my favorite shows when Jen's here with me. And thank you to everybody out there who partook in the chat and everybody who watched live or is watching or listening to us after we actually recorded it. Did you have one more thing, Dustin? It looked like you wanted to say something.
Nope, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Well, I saw this little pink emotion. I was like, one more thing.
No.
Well, Thank you, Dustin, for joining us. Until we chat to everybody again, keep it weird.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.